Okay, so we are looking at the Google version history, and I put the link in the chat to the slides. So why do we use Google Apps? I mean, obviously back in the day, I used to use Office, and for some reason I switched over to using Google Apps when at the time it was obviously really stripped down, and you only had docs and sheets initially, and I think I really joined on when slides was in there. At least we had slides, but it was really stripped down. And that's because of collaboration. I use it because it's hands down a better collaboration tool. Now, obviously, Microsoft is catching up and they've got a lot of great things that they're doing. And I like a lot of things with Microsoft. But I'm going to stick with Google for a lot of reasons. But they design with collaboration in mind. Like that is their initial mindset, is how do we collaborate? And so it gets a little scary, you know, like if I'm collaborating and we're on the same document at the same time, stress, right? Someone could mess it up, they could delete it, they could do all kinds of things. But I like to say that collaboration is risk-free, and it's risk-free because of version history. So even if someone edits it in a way that you don't like or does something, just relax, chill out, because we're going to use version history. Now, version history is has a keyboard shortcut, and this is kind of a universal keyboard shortcut. I don't know if you know that. If you use Control-Alt-Shift-H. Now, you're on a Mac, so it's Command-Option-Shift-H. Command-Option-Shift-H for a Mac. You really don't need this keyboard shortcut. It's in the menus of all of your documents. So, for example, this is my Google Slides. And before I let someone edit it, I go to the File menu and it says Version History. So you can see here where it says See Version History that it gives me the option for the keyboard shortcut. I almost never use the keyboard shortcut because I usually just go File, Version History. And I want you to name your versions. So before I share with anyone where they're going to edit on this, I name the current version template. Rename the current version template. And what I do is I just use the same Google Docs over and over again. Now, version history is now in Jamboard, so that's what we're going to specifically look at today. But you do have the version history in Docs and Sheets and Slides and now Jamboard, and it's also in Google Sites. Google Sites is a little less robust, and Jamboard's just a tiny bit less robust. But still pretty good. Okay, so something that I would like, I'm gonna get back to that one. I want you to name all your versions. I want you to get in the habit of naming versions, going into that version history and setting the version name. And that way we have no copies. So I use the same documents next year that I use this year. This year's syllabus becomes next year's syllabus. Then my drive's not all cluttered up with things. Like I've been using the same document for my syllabus for 15 years. Every semester, I just change it from fall to spring, change the year on it, make my updates, and I can always go back in the versions if I wanted to see what it looked like last year or the year before. So I always just reuse. So at the end of class, reset your documents back to the template if you had students collaborating with you, or just keep editing the same one over and over again. So I have a collaborative jam. It is here. There you go. So if you would add a sticky note and put your name on it. I am Alice. Oops, can't type my name tonight. I still can't. Just gonna go with it. Who the heck am I? Okay, so if you go into a Jamboard jam where you're going to see now, notice that in Google Slides, the File menu has version history under the File menu. In Jamboard, there is no File menu. Instead, it relies, like Google Forms, on the 3 dots menu. So you're going to look under that More Actions, 3 dots menu. And that's where it says See Version History. Now that keyboard shortcut does work. The keyboard shortcut does work in Google Jamboard. So if I do Control-Alt-Shift-H or Command-Option-Shift-H, since I'm on a Mac, you can see that it brought me to the version history. it seems like a lot of things to remember. So I usually just go to the three dots and I see the version history. So you can see that I created this document today at 4:31 p.m. Now over here on the right-hand side, I'm going to click on that timestamp and it's going to let me name it. I'm going to call it created. And you see up over in the middle version where it says March 21st, there is a tiny arrow next to it. So it looks like there is only 3 edits, 3 versions in this Jamboard Jam. Actually, if I click on that tiny triangle, I can see that there were multiple edits. At 4:31, PD Alice Keeler made some edits. At 4:34, now it's hard to tell what's the difference between these 2 versions. So my other self actually added a frame. You can see that there are 2 frames, whereas this version only has 1 frame. How can you tell? Observation. You got to be observant. And so then Krista comes in, and now there are 3 frames. But you'll notice that on this third one where Krista came in, what did Krista do? Well, from the second edit or the second version, I can see there's 2 frames, and then Krista came in and now there's 3 frames. So I can assume that Krista made this edit. Krista put her name on it. So I would assume Krista made that, not necessarily. So the difference between slides and Jamboard, slides would tell me who made the edit. It would highlight on there and say, Krista added this sticky note and Alice added this sticky note. Wouldn't that be nice? But it does not. You can't tell who did what exactly. You can kind of narrow it down a little bit by what's happening at the particular timestamp, but you'd have to be able to compare versions to really know, like, it wasn't here when Alice did it, and it was here when Krista did it. It would be nice, obviously, if like doc sheets and slides, it did it. I think the reason it doesn't is probably the same reason that I suspect that there's a 20 frame limit in Jamboard. The problem with Jamboard is it's this open canvas. It's not just, it's not just like Google Slides where I can put anything anywhere. It also allows me to draw. I'm gonna get the marker. Right? Think about all the coding that has to go into making each one of those individual strokes with all the parts on it, with the collaboration. I think that the file size just gets so large, it starts to choke. In fact, I've noticed that when I am making a Google Jamboard and I put a lot of elements on Jamboard, it starts to choke. Like things don't load properly. Things seem to kind of like blink and come in and out. You know, it just has to keep track of all those individual little pieces. And I think just coding wise, it's just very tricky for them, obviously, to say who put this pen stroke here and who put it there. I think it was probably an engineering feat just to get the version history to begin with. Will they ever have it? I bet they will. Who knows when? My experience is when they say stuff's coming out, it's sometimes 2, 3, 5 years and sometimes never. I mean, they're not going to release it until it works. So it is what it is. I'm going to go up to the 3 dots and I'm going to come down here to the C version history. And in version history, I can see who at what time was editing, not necessarily what they edited in particular. So first, any questions?
Okay. Nope, no questions. I finally get how to do that.
Yes.
Template thing. I never do it.
Yeah. I mean, before you give it to students to edit, you want to go in. So let's say this is the status of the one that I want students, you know, I've created it. I've done some edits, made my graphic organizer, and then this is my template. So before I share it with others to edit, I name it the template. All right, so then of course we're editing and we're adding things. Please feel free to do whatever you'd like on there. Anything you'd like that's appropriate. Right? I like sticky notes a lot. They're pretty great.
Can you go back to the version history, Alice?
Yeah, I was about
what
to.
What was that button to open?
In there. I'm sorry, what?
When to look at the 3 dots again?
Mm-hmm. Yep, the 3 dots.
What was the C version history?
Mm-hmm. For now, it's at the bottom. I bet they'll rewrite it And
What is that? When you touch that, what is that thing to open up the button?
the 3 dots is the more action menu.
Oh,
Some people
okay.
refer to it as the shish kebab or the snowman.
Oh, okay. But then there's one to open. Like I saw another tab. Click on see version history.
Okay, see version history.
What is only when? What does that say? Above March 21st?
Oh, only show named versions.
Oh, what does that mean?
So when you do that, it's only going to show when I'm here.
Yeah.
When I do named versions, it drops out the timestamps and it
Oh,
only
okay.
shows the ones that you've actually named. Remember I said get in the habit of naming versions.
Oh, okay.
Now, in Google Slides, when you go to the version history, file, version history, see the current version. First of all, it lets me name it. Currently, Jamboard doesn't. And when I come in here, I'm able to name it just the same. It looks very similar. It's almost the same. So when I name them, you can see I have all of these timestamps.
Yeah.
Right. So when I toggle it, it shows me just those 2 that I named.
Oh, okay.
So in both Slides and Jamboard, I can go to the version history, I can find the versions, and I can name the versions. In Slides, I'm able to name it from the menu. Right now, I cannot do that in Jamboard. Will they eventually? Probably. I mean, I don't know. They don't talk to me, but probably. Yes. So you can see in here, you can toggle it. So it's only showing the named ones so that all those micro edits go away. The important pivotal moments. So I would get in that habit, like after first period, name it first period, and then I restore it back. So let's say right now this is first period. I'm going to call it first period. And then I go to the template and I restore this. So now I'm ready to use it with second period. Uh-oh, what happened? No, I'm good. I'm back to 3 slides, frames. There's 3 frames. Okay. Draw a triangle. Okay, and 3 dots, see the version history, it's second period. I'm going to name this second period. And then I can restore it back to template. Now I recommend that you restore it back to template when you're done using it, so it's fresh and ready for you to use next year. Now, when you reuse assignments in Google Classroom, if you've gone back to your version history and restored it, then when you reuse it, it's in a state that's not all like wonky and messed up, you know? So that's a suggestion.
Oh, okay.
You can, if you wanted to, you're like, okay, I got all these things I was doing with students. I just need a fresh one. You can go the 3 dots on the version history, and you notice it does give you the option to make a copy. Now, remember I told you, come here, don't make copies. That's kind of like my general mindset. Of course, I make copies sometimes, but in general, I'm like, why do I make copies? Why can't I just keep them in the versions? Just leave them in the versions. If you really need to pop it out to its own, you can do that in the version history. So on the 3 dots, you can choose make a copy. Now that is in Google Slides also. So I go File, Version History. I see the version history in Google Slides, and then I can click on the More Actions button. 3 dots, I can make a copy, and it'll pop out a new copy of that version. So you can pull it out if you need it. So, here over here, I'm going to go to the 3 dots. I'm going to see the version history, and here's first period. Now, what if tomorrow I want to go back and revisit and do some more work with first period? It might make sense to 3 dots, make a copy, pop that out for first period. But a lot of times I'm just doing something during class, and so I can just keep reusing the same one every day, or every period, first period, second period, third period. I don't really need to come back to it. We're just doing it for today. So I'll just keep reusing the same one. I definitely, anytime anything major happens, I like to name the version. Okay. So here's my takeaways here is I want to encourage you to collaborate. Let me come back. We use Google Apps because we collaborate. So as you make your lesson plans every day, think, okay, how am I going to let the kids mess this up? I don't really do so much class collaboration on a single Google Doc. Sometimes though, usually not. Google Docs is great for collaborating with one other person, maybe up to 5, but at the same time, it starts to move around as you're typing. So I usually restrict that for when I'm working with a very small group, or if we're doing asynchronous editing on the Google Doc. Otherwise, I'll usually choose Slides, Jamboard, or Sheets. And also, you can collaborate in real time in Google Sites. And Google Sites does have version history. It's a little stripped down, but it does have a version history so that you can see what older versions look like on the website. But I want you to think about looking at these tools in particular. How do I get collaboration into my lessons? How am I more than one person working on the document at the same time? I get my hairs on the back of my neck stick up when you think like, oh, good Jamboard, you can do math problems on it. No, you can do math problems on paper. You know, this is not a paper replacement. It's a collaboration tool. So if I'm using Jamboard, I'm putting at least 2 students on it at the same time. Like, how do I kick this up a notch? How do I make it better than paper? I make it better than paper because I collaborate. I have 1 + 1 is not 2. We're going to share ideas. We're going to do strategies. We're going to compare and contrast. We're going to have conversations and discussions, which are really powerful for learning. I'm not going to have it be do this by yourself, sit and use it like paper. There's nothing wrong with paper. I love paper. In fact, a lot of ways paper is better depending on what the task is. So if I'm going to go digital, I'm going to do it because I want at least, my goal here, at least 2 students at the same time on the same document. So then when they work together, you can go to those 3 dots and see the version history and see how the collaboration went and the contributions of the students working together on the same document. And if one student messes it up, it's no big deal. We can restore it back to a previous version before it got messed up. Okay, it's about all I have. So any questions?
So if I were to compare and contrast 2 stories, I would use Jamboard more than Sheets. I mean, not Sheets, Slides. What you think? Slides. We're doing 2 stories for nonfiction. Slides?
So are you having students working together?
Together.
Okay. I like Jamboard because when I have them do the compare and contrast, the adding of the sticky notes is so much easier than adding of the text boxes.
Text boxes
the
are
dragging, even adults. The dragging of things in Jamboard is a lot easier. So it's the adding the sticky note. It's like, let's talk about this idea. And I make the sticky note really big. And then we're not talking about that idea and I shrink it back up. And so the idea is not so much that you can drag and label things. More is that we can have conversations and discussions and talk about it and share ideas. So we can brainstorm. We can group our like ideas and our non-like ideas, compare and contrast in those ways. And so for that, I would definitely use Jamboard.
So I could just put the background as a compare contrast template.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'll show you how to make that. In fact, I actually make my background templates in Google Slides. So in Google Slides, let me just add a blank slide, blank. And the reason I do is because the proportions are right to get it onto Jamboard. So I'm going to go in and go ahead and make my circle.
Shift is the one to keep it.
I am holding down the shift.
Okay, that's right, yeah. Okay.
And I like to make the border a little thicker. You can see it's the paint can, the border color, and the border thickness. So I'm going to make the border thicker. If you'd like to have this shaded, I'll usually do light yellow. I go back to the paint can and I go to custom because it allows me to make it transparent.
Oh, okay.
Turn on the transparency. Now I'm going to duplicate this. Control D, duplicate. Control D, duplicate. And I'm going to make this one light blue, but I go back and customize it so that I turn up the transparency. So now you can see it's kind of green there in the middle with the, so I get that compare and contrast going and I use file and I download as a JPEG. The only reason to download as a PNG is if you have transparency. It's like Slides isn't transparent by default, so I would just use JPEG. You can make it transparent, but you got to put some effort into it. Okay, so on a new frame, I go to Set Background, and under Set Background, it has this image option where I can add that slide I just downloaded. So I make it in Google Slides, I download it as a JPEG using the file menu. Let me show you again. I'm in slides. I go file. I go download. I download as a JPEG. And then those I set as my backgrounds in Jamboard.
Okay. Now I get the transparency. I didn't know how to do that with the circles.
Yeah, if I need oh yes. You mean the reduce the opacity? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know how to do that on the bottom. Okay.
Okay, do you want me to show you that again, or do you think you
Yeah,
got it?
show me that part again with the paint can.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I use this a lot with the transparency, with the opacity. So I'm holding down the shift key to make this circle.
Okay.
And then I'm filling it with whatever color I want.
Mm-hmm.
That is completely opaque, right? You cannot see through it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to go back to the paint can. I'm like, I want to customize this.
Oh,
So I'm gonna do
customize.
this again twice.
Okay.
And that allows me to adjust the
Transparency. Oh, there. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that existed. Oh, okay.
All right.
And how far do you go in the transparency? Whatever you think. Okay.
You know, it
Play with
depends,
it.
obviously. Okay, I'm just going to drag my Bitmoji on here. Now this is on top. I'm going to send it to the back.
Ah.
Now how the transparency.
Oh, that's how people do it.
Not so helpful, but the transparency on the shapes.
I
Now,
always
when I download this, I file download. I'm going to download it as a JPEG. I'm going to make a new frame in Jamboard. I'm going to set the background. I'm going to choose image. I'm going to drag that slide that I just downloaded into the background. Now these are fixed because they're on the background. I can no longer move them. I can't set the transparency or anything like that. So all my editing tools are over there in slides. It is a little bit easier, and you can see it uploads really nicely from slides into Jamboard.
Okay, so if that was the Venn diagram one, how do I make it duplicated to every one again?
Okay, so this is my Venn diagram.
Yeah.
When I go to the frame bar, that's that little square up at the top, it's going to expand, and you're going to do the 3 dots menu on the frame so I can duplicate it.
Oh, okay. I always forget how to do that.
Right, so I'll make several of them.
Okay.
And then, of course, I'm going to go to the version history. I'm going to name this one, Venn diagram template. That way, if it gets messed up, I can put it right back to the way it was, so it's fresh to reuse for next year. So I'm not having to make Venn diagrams over and over again. I just keep reusing the same file over and over again.
Okay. That's good. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.